with it. My mom was a dialysis nurse for a number of years, and she actually helped a doctor set up his dialysis center.
Huh.
And I spent a lot of time there, and it just is there's this overwhelming desire for people to find anything else but the care that you need for that.
Mhm.
And I mean, I get it, but it doesn't help because it delays what needs to happen, and sometimes causes a lot of times causes further damage. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I should be respectful of, the patient's own philosophies and desires and the narratives that they have and, what they've experienced beforehand. Um, but I just,
Yes,
like, what?
but
Come on!
you also have to be her advocate for getting what she needs, and what she
Right.
needs is be connected to a nephrologist.
Well, you are infinitely wiser in that domain than I. Although I've had my naturopathic training. I think there's still a deficiency there in kind of navigating that process. And you as a coach and understanding more of the psychology than I do, I think you have a better understanding of that than I do.
Well, hopefully that master's degree in psychology serves me well in coaching, but it's just, I think a lot of it is the way that I was raised. So my mom was one of those old school nurses, right? Where it's you treat the patient first and the disease or condition after.
Yes.
And and so, that's not what they do now. It's more a numbers game. There's so many people to see, resources are limited, everything has to be done a certain way through computerization, all of that stuff. And so that really personalized level of care that allowed you to connect and build this rapport with the patient, um, so that there was a partnership in care, is not there as much today as it was back then. So it just, it's more challenging now, believe me. I totally get it.
It's crazy. Yeah. I hate the EHR. And, there's this mechanistic machinery approach to medicine.
Mhm.
And, it's like, where's the balance in that? Because there's a big number of people that need care. And, as with your own experience in sorting out this MS thing, and folks with autoimmune disease and rheumatology, there's a limited number of providers who really understand that. And so it's like, holy smokes, what do we do? And I don't have any answers there yet. I don't have enough gray hairs, but
I got plenty. I got plenty. Thank God for Clairol, right?
what I see, not a spink of gray, and I doubt it's as gray as you think. So
Oh, but it is. So, but they buy these, they provide these lovely bottles of stuff that just helps it to wash away. So kind of awesome.
beautiful. Okay, so I'm grounded in center. Do you want to jump into the meat and potatoes here?
Sure.
Okay, so I've actually been recording since I popped in because I like to keep this for real and authentic, and I think just spontaneity and cool stuff really comes out and evolves if we do that. So, but just kind of tell everybody a little bit about your story, who you are, and why you do what you do, Yvette.
Well, I'm a certified health coach, certified sleep science coach. But I guess my real connection is that I'm living with multiple sclerosis, and so I'm really honored to be here and to be able to share my story during Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. Woohoo, thank you. But it's my story is like a lot of people's. I had it for years before it was diagnosed. I made excuses for my symptoms, and some of my symptoms were things that should have screamed at me to go and find out what was happening. So my arm would lift by itself, and I would use the other hand to pull it back down, and I would get dizzy, or feel like I was going to pass out. Um, the fatigue was just like almost indescribable. It was kind of like walking through drying cement with a backpack full of boulders on my back, and it just really affected my quality of life. And those are the things that I ignored. It's like, oh, my arm's lifting by itself. Maybe that's a pinched nerve. Oh, this fatigue is terrible. Maybe, I've been burning the candle at both ends. Maybe I lit it in the middle and I've just been too busy. I'll catch up on the weekend,
Mhm.
right? And so I just ignored everything until I couldn't ignore anything anymore. And that was when I got diplopia, double vision. And so I was sitting in a classroom and the students they were working on their assignment. And so I'm sitting at the desk and I just, I'm exhausted. And so I just kind of leaned my head back and the room started to spin, right? As soon as I closed my eyes, everything was going. And I'm like, oh, this is not fair. I'm not even drunk and the room is spinning, right? And so I open my eyes, I bring my head forward and I have double vision. And I'm like, crap, okay, this is neurological. I can't fix this and I can't ignore it. I have to be seen. And so I went in and I went to I went to urgent care first and they didn't even want to see me. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. You have to see me. And they ran a few tests and they said, you need an MRI. We can't help you here. And so I went to the emergency room and it took them like 18 or 19 hours to determine that I needed an MRI, even though I walked in the door saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a bunch of tests that were not necessary, but
Mhm.
it's kind of par for the course of how being diagnosed with MS goes. It's a rule out diagnosis. So, they tried all of these things. So I had blood work done, which absolutely 100%, I expected that. They did an EKG, and I told them, I'm not here for cardiac reasons. That part is fine. I have something neurological going on, and I need an MRI. And so then they did a CAT scan, and, I'm like, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but what I really need is this MRI. And they said, well, we have to do the CAT scan first. And so they did the CAT scan. CAT scan came back great. And they said, what you need is an MRI.
I've been telling you that from the beginning.
And so the doctor went to go and set up the MRI, and she came back about 5 minutes later and said, I am so sorry. The MRI department just closed half an hour ago.
Oh,
So we're going to admit you and keep you overnight. And we'll do your MRI first thing in the morning. And I was like, wow, okay. And so then they were like, there are no beds available for you on the floor. So we're going to have you hang out here and then we'll get you moved up as soon as we can. And my mom had come in, and that, like, we might be able to tell the story of that because they lost me in the hospital and they were sending her around trying to find me. And and so I told her, I said, Mom, there's not really anything you can do right now. So you just go home and get some rest and I'll call you tomorrow. And so about 2 o'clock in the morning was when they got me into the room, 2 or 3. I'd been there almost 24 hours by the time they got me into a room. And I told them, I said, I'm really hungry. Can I get something to eat? And so they brought me a cup of applesauce. And
was it Mott's? Mott's applesauce?
it was mocked applesauce. Yes.
Hopefully there was a little cinnamon in there.
No, it was the plain kind, but it was better than nothing. But I hadn't eaten for 24 hours, so it was probably not enough. And so a few hours later, they came to tell me that they had canceled my MRI because they did not have my CT scan results yet. And I was like, no, no, no. You go back and you reschedule that right now because I'm starving, and you can have my results. Make a copy and give them back to me. So they did, and they're like, "Oh, you have the results?" I said, "Yes, I do." And here you go. What time is the MRI? And so they um, they set it back up. I had the MRI. The doctor came in, and he said, "It looks like you have MS." He said, "We'll do some more tests to confirm, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it is." I said, "Oh, okay." he said, yeah, it's kind of a progressive disease. It just kind of gets worse over the years. At some point, you'll end up in a wheelchair. And and then he kind of shrugged, and I said, oh, okay. And then he went. Um, and by that time, my family was back in there with me. He did allow me to have some regular food. I had to fight for like the non-cardiac diet.
Can I pause
And
you for a second?
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I just like the sterility of that delivery, you
Yes,
know?
yes.
Um, can you just kind of talk about like what was going through your head and that process?
It felt like the room started to spin again, but it wasn't vertigo. It was just my thoughts and my emotions. And then there was this, you don't have the luxury of reacting to this right now because there are people here and you need to like be strong for the family members who are here. So don't react. And so I didn't. So I smiled and I ate and chatted with my sister, and my mom were there, my ex-boyfriend was there, and so we all just kind of chatted a little bit, um and I just kept the emotions away until they left. And then once they left, again, I didn't really want to deal with it because when you're raised by a nurse, I read most of her medical books when I was very young. I had the mechanics of how to deliver a baby by the time I was 9 years old, right? And so I had all of this information in my head, but not enough about MS to know what that was going to look like for me. And I was scared to find out for sure.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to admit being scared because, there's always this, you have to be strong. I'm a single mom. I have two kids. My son had just gone, he just turned an adult and he was off like trying to find his own way. And I have my daughter at home. She's 16 years old. And I have to keep it all together, and I have to be strong, and I have to make sure that her life is okay and not affected by everything that's going on. And so I chose not to deal with it in that moment. I just stayed with spending time with family. And then once they left, it was bury yourself in something else. And so Netflix, I had my tablet with me, and so I watched movies until the battery was low. And once I had to put it on the charger, there was no one there. There was nothing there. It was just me and my thoughts. And then it hit, and I cried.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to disturb the other patients. By this time, it's 4 o'clock in the morning the next day, and so I just silently sobbed and thought to myself, "What am I going to do? How am I going to make this work? Like, how am I a mom? Like, how is this going to affect me? What am I going to do?" And so at that point, once the battery was charged, I'm like back on the tablet, looking up MS and trying to put it in some perspective. And a lot of what I was finding was not very encouraging because um, there just hasn't always been a lot of really good information about MS. It's only been in the last maybe 3 years that we've really had stronger information that is more hopeful. And so I just, I tucked it away again. I figured that I would figure things out because that's what I do. I figure things out, right? Um, and I didn't realize how much it was going to impact me emotionally with not being able to control it,
Mhm.
right? So I actually checked myself out of the hospital early because my daughter had been on she was on a color guard trip and she was coming home. And I didn't want her to come home to an empty house and then have to figure out, you know, what's this thing with mom. So I left AMA and they had me on IV steroids to get it under control. And so I just told them, give me the pills. I'll take the pills. And so they did. They gave me some high dose steroids in pill format so that I could take those from home, and told me to connect with my GP as soon as I could. And the confirming test that they had done was a lumbar puncture, and so I was waiting for the results on that. But I started thinking about all of the things that I had been experiencing that I had been ignoring,
Yeah.
and then it all started to just kind of make some sense. And I thought, I really, yeah, I want to see the results. And of course, then another rabbit hole, like what is a lumbar puncture going to show? And, what are these oleodendrocytes, and what, what, what does it mean? And
What is all this
all of that.
Chinese? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so by the time the results came back, um, you know, I had resigned myself to having that. I actually took the results to my doctor, showed him what it was, explained to him what they meant, and told him we needed to figure something out. So he referred me to a neurologist, and it was about finding finding a way to cope with the fact that I have an incurable disease and I have to live with it,
Mhm.
and I have to find a way, you know. So at, at that point, I was already starting to live healthier than I had before. Um, I had been obese, and I wanted to get rid of the extra weight, and so I had already changed just kind of my mindset. I changed how I was eating. I changed how my movement stuff to just be healthier. So I had already lost a good chunk of the weight, and so I thought I'm going to put my focus on finishing that, right? Getting to my goal weight. And I'm not going to let MS stop me from doing that. And so I ended up losing a total of 80 pounds. And the last probably 30 or 35 of it was after diagnosis. And it gave me something to put my mind towards, and then something to celebrate once I achieved it. But there were still other things going on. Like, it's depressing hearing that you have a disease and there's no cure,
Mhm.
right? So there's levels of depression for that. So there is the emotional depression. The disease modifying therapy drug that they put me on caused a chemical depression.
Mhm.
And then there are chemical changes in the body that occur just from the disease itself, whether you're on a drug to slow it down or not, that also can cause depression. And
Mhm.
that's why, when you see the statistics about how, you know, depression, there's a higher rate of depression for people with MS than like the top three other diseases combined,
Mm.
right? And so I'm like, oh no, I don't need anything for this. I can do this on my own. I'll just exercise through it and all of the things. And that was not how it worked out. It just became overwhelming, and I ended up accepting a prescription after multiple times of my neurologist trying to get me to do it, and I
Mhm.
kept refusing. And my daughter goes to an appointment with me, and the neurologist says, "How's the depression?" I said, "Oh no, it's fine." My daughter says, "It's not fine."
Called you out.
She did. She just like told everything. I was like, man. But I did agree to go on something, and that did get it under control until I could get me under control.
Mhm.
And then I just started just really exploring what do I need to do to live better. So I wasn't a I wasn't a health coach before that, but I wanted to figure out how I could use food as medicine and how I could incorporate everything that you get from a health coach to live better with the disease. So I went back to school and got my certification, and that gave me a foundation. And then it was doing my own research and trial and error stuff to figure out what do I need to do so that I can achieve my optimal health, and not let this disease stop me from doing the things that I want to do. I'm my fun weekend job when we're not in the middle of a pandemic is as an official for mixed martial arts. And so, like, I want to still be able to do that. How am I going to be able to do that? And, I'm a substitute teacher and I still need to be able to get into the classroom and connect with these kids. How am I going to be able to do that? And so it was a journey to figure out how to live better with the disease and to understand that the disease is there and it is going to play its role, but it does not have to control my life in the sense of preventing me from living a full life. It doesn't. I felt like a victim at first. And when I decided I didn't want to be a victim anymore, is when I took a proactive approach to living better with the disease.
I love that you highlighted that. It sounds like you've always been a go-getter from the start, but that mental frame and narrative that you hold, I'm a victim of this, or this is just another obstacle I have to overcome, powerful. I see people come in and they have severe rheumatoid arthritis. They're in a wheelchair and they're just happy-go-lucky. There's still things they have to do. And, I'm not mitigating anybody's pathway and their own suffering, but there's other people who have a little bit of swelling and they can do everything they need to do, and it's the sky is falling for them. And that's where folks with your art form come in and helping reframe that mindset. I want to jump back to an earlier part of your story. It sounds like when you got the diplopia and you went in and urgent care settings, acute care settings. Why didn't somebody jump to the MRI? Somebody use their brain. Don't follow the typical algorithmic approach. But I want to get a sense of first. Remind everybody what were the symptoms first? Was it the fatigue? Was it the spasms? And how long was that going on before you actually got that MRI done following the diplopia and the MS diagnosis?
So it was years. Um, the fatigue was probably the first thing that I noticed. There were some times when I would have like an uneven gait. There were the sort of spasticity and the spasms and stuff like that was, uh, you know, sporadic, but it had been there. I can remember I was doing a year of service as an AmeriCorps, and I had taken a vacation. I drove to Vegas and I was driving back, and I literally had to pull over every, I want to say, hour to 2 hours to sleep on the side of the road
Wow.
because the fatigue was so overwhelming that I like my eyelids were literally so heavy that I didn't think I could drive another mile.
Mhm.
And it had never been that bad before. I had experienced extreme fatigue, but that was the worst. And so then I make it back. I sleep for a few hours, and I go to the Boys and Girls Club for my service. And I walked in, and they said, "You need to go home." And I'm like, "I just got here. What do you mean?" "No, you need to go home now. You clearly don't feel well." And I said, "I'm fine. I can do this." And they're like, "You're going to scare the kids because you are so pale. You look like you're getting ready to pass out."
Mhm.
And then they made a joke, which I love humor. And they were like, "You're supposed to be black. Right now, you look white. You need to go home." Like, "Dang, is that bad?" They said, "Yeah." So I went home and basically passed out. And I think I slept for 18 or 20 hours. And I woke up exhausted. I just felt like I didn't have any energy at all, even after sleeping that long. And that was, I want to say, 2 years before my diagnosis.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can pinpoint probably 4 or 5 years before diagnosis, Scott. I remember clearly the symptoms. There were probably some before that I haven't really dug deep enough into to identify them, but it was some years before.
Yeah, it's a slow brewing process, kind of comes episodically, and maybe you're like, "What the heck is this or that?" Or, and depending on what kind of neurotype you have, maybe you ignore it, put it on the back burner. Other people, run to the doctor right away. But I just wanted to highlight that so folks can be alert of some of the early features of multiple sclerosis. We didn't really define it. So what is multiple sclerosis?
So MS is a disease of the central nervous system, and it can affect the brain, excuse me, the spine, the optic nerves. And what happens is, I like to, when I explain it, I like to liken it to a computer, right? So your brain is the computer, and your computer is what sends out these messages for everything that you're going to do. But if the cord that you plug into the wall is not in good condition, then it's not going to get the power that it needs. It's not going to be able to send the signal right. So if you look at this cord, you have the cord, it's got these copper wires in it, and it's got this sort of rubber coating or cover over it, right, to protect the wires, because the wires are what give the power. That's what connects everything. So the wires are your nerves, and the rubber coating is your myelin sheath. And when there is damage to the coating and the power tries to go through the wires, you may see sparks, the signals don't go the way they're supposed to, you may not get the power that you're supposed to. So when the myelin sheath, the covering over your nerves, is damaged, then the signals don't go from your brain to wherever they're trying to get the right way. Sometimes they don't get there at all. Sometimes they get there, but they go kind of wonky on the journey to go. So with diplopia, here's my optic nerve and the muscles over there. My brain is sending this signal and it's not reaching where it's supposed to. So everybody knows that anything that happens in your body starts with the brain, right? Your brain tells you to breathe. Your brain tells you to lift your hands so you can wave, and then you do. And so if the signals are not going the way they're supposed to, then things don't react the way that they're supposed to. Now, our bodies are these amazing things and they can regenerate, right? And so we call it remyelination when you repair the damage. The disease destroys it faster than your body's natural processes to repair it. So when you go and have an MRI, they will see these lesions on the MRI that shows that you've had some kind of damage activity. And so you can have old lesions. This was something that was active before, but now it's calmed down, but the damage is still there. Or you can have active lesions, which are inflamed and are actively doing damage to the myelin.
Mhm.
So, it's called a snowflake disease because no two people experience it the same way. There are no two people with the exact same set of symptoms. There are no two people with the exact same disease progression. Um, so that a lot of times will make people feel alone, and as if that no one understands what they're experiencing. I think the thing to think about in that situation is that even identical twins have some differences in how they do things, right? Identical twins, you have two girls, identical twins, who may be attracted to totally different types of guys. Or, you know what I mean? Like, or one likes philosophy and the other likes biology.
One
They're
likes
not
tacos,
exactly,
one likes pizza.
exactly, but they can still like practically read each other's minds. They never feel alone when they're together. That's how it works. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing within the MS community. So I might not experience things the same way that anyone else does, but I empathize with everything that they're experiencing. And I totally get that there are these symptoms, whether they're the same as mine or not, and I can feel with them, to help them understand that they're not alone.
Mhm.
And that's what I want everybody to understand is that yes, you are unique, but you're not alone. And you don't have to be as you are going through this process if you let people in. One of the problems with MS is that there seems to be this sort of stigma attached to it. And that happens with a lot of what we call the invisible diseases.
Yeah.
So some of the autoimmune conditions, fibromyalgia, lupus, until later stages when you can see the physical symptoms and the physical responses that the body is making. So
Mhm.
in the earlier stages, when you can't see that, those people are still experiencing these things, but people look at it and say, oh, you know, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, they're drinking already. And that's because there's an irregular gait, or maybe the speech is slurred, or, you know, whatever the person's symptoms are. And
Mhm.
so it's important for people to know that there's this whole community out there that understands. And then there's this other community out there that will understand when you start talking and educating them so that they know what you're experiencing and what that's like, right? So I think that just communicating, raising awareness, sharing what you're feeling, and being open about it really helps, just to educate so that people, even though they're not living what you are, they can live it with you.
I love that. I love your analogy on how MS works. I love your analogy. That was great. That was fabulous. I couldn't have done it better myself. And I like this concept you highlighted of invisible illness. When things are early in the game, brewing and stewing, and especially if somebody's younger, there's a proclivity or tendency for them to be dismissed. You know,
Yes.
that's a lot of the women I work with. You know, and it's like, what the heck? You know, everybody else who looks at them, how can you have an illness? You're like 20, 30 years old. You know,
If I had a dollar for every time somebody said, but you look so good, you know, when we're talking about the disease. So now I have a brochure from the MS Society that the name of the brochure is, but you look so good. And I keep some of that in my car. And, you know, when I'm out and about under normal circumstances and somebody says that, then I give them a brochure to help them understand. Because, you know, people in general are not doing it out of spite or anything like that. They're doing it out of ignorance.
ignorance. Yep.
And when you're faced with ignorance, the best weapon against ignorance is education. Educate
Yes.
them, educate them, teach them. So,
Yes. Well, I think some of these doctors should be slapped in the face with a brochure, you know, but
yeah, yeah.
I guess we don't have to get I can be a little abrasive, but let's keep the animosity to a minimum here. But yeah, invisible illness. I mean, like my patient Zero, I met her in a rock climbing gym, severe lupus, hospitalized multiple times, worked up at Mayo. Everybody's throwing their hands in the air. Does she have lymphoma, this or that? I met her. I was like, you have lupus? She's like, don't worry, it's not contagious. And I'm like, I know. But it was like she could outperform me physically. She was a single mom with two little kids, you know, and one of them has substantial health issues, and it was just like, wow, it just opened my mind up to this concept of invisible illness. um, I want to talk a little bit about the diagnostic bit here, because there's some women who and men who unfortunately go years seeking a diagnosis. And you talked about, you brought up this great analogy with twins, and how no two cases of MS may present alike. And so I know very little of MS. It's not my bread and butter. It's not my peanut butter and jelly. You talk a little bit about the diagnostic process. Are there blood tests? I mean, you kind of hinted at imaging studies. What goes into that?
So I guess I would look at it a couple of ways. So the primary way that MS is typically diagnosed is through an MRI and being able to see the lesions on the brain or on the spine. But to get to that point takes a little bit more effort, and that is typically based on the symptoms and the symptoms that you share with your doctor. And for most people, it's not an emergency room visit. It is you're going to your primary care physician, and you are, each time you're having a new symptom, you go and you explain it, and they will run blood tests and try all of these different things. And they are not typically going to find anything. Most of them do not immediately jump to, maybe this is autoimmune. Here are some things that we can check to see what's going on. It just does not typically happen that way. So when I talk about ignorance in education, here's another opportunity. This is another teachable moment for our primary care physicians to have them start thinking outside the box and not just the typical, there's nothing wrong with you, or you're a hypochondriac, or, you know, I'm not finding anything kind of situation. So that's incumbent on all of us to start helping them, be educated and see that. But the process is generally, once you've gone through, so many times of going to see them, and you have these things that you can't explain and they're not finding anything for it, then they'll think, oh, maybe something is going on. Let's take some scans and see. Once the scans come back with visible evidence of something, right? They make a supposition that it is MS, or it often gets confused with Lyme disease. So those are the two that often get misdiagnosed. And then it's, the lumbar puncture is usually a confirmatory test. Some of the things that could be done that are not typically done is, and looking at inflammation markers.
Mhm.
Um, that's not something that your typical doctor is going to order, but you can ask for it, right? You can ask for it. Um, so I think being an advocate for yourself, knowing that, you know, something is wrong in my body, I need to figure out what it is, and I need to help my doctor figure out what it is. And, you know, like, whether you suspect that you have MS or something else, something is going on in your body that's not right.
Mhm.
Listen to your body, and then work with your doctor and educate your doctor on the potential, right? Doctor, I've come to you with these 6 symptoms and we aren't finding anything. Can we look at something else? I know that you're not seeing anything, but I also know that there's something wrong going on in my body, and I'd like to figure out what that is. I'd like your help with it. So when you are like pulling them out that way and asking for their help that way, then it's easier to get them to buy in that they need to do more to help you figure out this puzzle. It's a puzzle, right? And if you don't start with the flat pieces around the edges so that you have a frame, it makes it really difficult to fill in the rest of the picture. So I think that just being proactive, being an advocate for yourself, not accepting it when they say, I don't see anything, because again, we're looking at these invisible diseases. So yeah, it's harder to see something there, but that there's something, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Listen to your body, talk to your doctor.
I love that. Yeah, you have to keep digging. You have to advocate for yourself. It's especially tricky early on in the process when things haven't evolved clearly, but you got to keep digging. I want to talk about more specifically the thing. I mean, and I love your mentality here. This isn't going to get me down. I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to clean up my lifestyle. I'm going to do this, this, and this. What more specifically did you do to stave this off and improve your quality of life?
So the mindset part was really important, and I feel like I sort of backslid from that. When I was losing weight, I tried all of the diets. I tried all of like, I can't even tell you how much money I spent on those videos to
Do the
work out. And
did you do the cabbage juice diet?
I I did not. Probably the only one though that I didn't do. And I would lose some weight and then I would put it back on. And the problem was that I didn't have the mindset right. And um, I was in a CBT class and doing some of the exercises in that class. And it occurred to me, here I am with all of this education in psychology, and I forgot about the mind. Right? Like, I can help somebody else with their psychological issues, but I'm totally ignoring that as a factor for myself, which I guess, is why all therapists have therapists, right? And so once I figured that part out, meditation is amazing. Looking at the stress that you are under, and stress is horrible for people with MS. It can actually cause a relapse, right? And so they tell you, when they're talking about your treatment options, stay away from stress as much as you possibly can. And so looking at what is stressing you out and finding a way to mitigate that in a healthy way is good, right? Looking at your nutritional intake, what are you deficient in? If you're not taking vitamin D, you probably should be. If you need to know your levels, get those checked, right? Those are huge. The nutrients that you have in your body, you really can use food as medicine if you do it the right way. So knowing, excuse me, where you're deficient and then compensating for that with the food that you eat is important. You can also use supplements, right? But try to get everything that you need from your food. It's better that way. And the things that you can't, you can supplement. The movement, you gotta move, right? We need exercise. And I don't like to call it exercise because people um, picture themselves having to be in the gym for 2 hours doing this, excessive cardio in order to get any benefits, but you don't, right? You don't. And movement, the benefits that you get from movement are cumulative. So I don't have to sit and work out for an hour, right? I can walk for 10 minutes in the morning, and then I can dance for 15 minutes in the afternoon, and then I can go swimming for 30 minutes, and I still have that full amount of benefit from all of those things. The effects are cumulative.
Mhm.
And then do the extra things, right? Like massage therapy is awesome.
Mhm.
And some of the things that people with MS will experience, the spasticity, I get knots in my shoulders that you think I was playing professional football or something, right? So go get a massage. It actually helps. Chiropractic care, acupuncture if that's your thing, acupressure if you're scared of needles. I mean, there are all of these different modalities that can work together to
Mhm.
help you see these tremendous benefits. So I went away from the days where I could barely lift my head off the pillow to being able to do a full workout. I still have to pay attention to like my body overheating and stuff like that because that's a thing with MS, Utop's phenomenon, where you can your symptoms can get worse, or like I went temporarily blind in the beginning when I didn't know what heat does to people with MS.
Mhm.
But there are ways that you can do things that work around whatever the limitations are so that you still get the benefits that you need and you still get to live a better life. And so that's the thing, is just making a commitment to yourself to find that for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a process and it takes time. How long did it take you along the way to really hit your groove and stride and find a program for yourself that worked well for you?
It took me a bit. Part of it was, again, trying to be strong instead of admitting when I needed help and instead of admitting that I'm not I'm affected by it just like everyone else is affected by it. And
Mhm.
trying to pretend like I'm not didn't work. I can remember my daughter came home from school one day and I was sitting on the couch crying. And it was just, I was feeling sorry for myself. I was depressed and I was crying. And my daughter walks in and she puts her arms around me and she hugs me and she tells me it's going to be okay. And what caused this particular episode was that I had been talking to somebody on the phone, and because of the cognitive changes that MS can also have on people, I was having problems with articulating what I wanted to say.
Mhm.
And so I would get stuck in the conversation, unable to complete a sentence. And in order to understand how important that was to me, people used to call me a wordsmith, right? So if Yvette's around, you don't need a thesaurus, just ask her, she'll know the word, right? Or if you need to phrase something a certain way and it needs to be stronger or it needs to be softer or it needs to be whatever, just ask Yvette. And so my intellect was part of my identity, and all of a sudden this disease is taking that away from me.
Mhm.
And I just lost it. And so I'm just I didn't it, I lost track of time. I didn't realize that she was so close to coming home because I didn't like for her to see me break down that way. And so I am just wailing And she walks in, she sees me, she puts her arms around me, and she says, it's going to be okay. And I'm telling her, it's not going to be okay. And she's like, it is, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, it's never going to be okay again. And she said, it is, but what's wrong? And I said, I don't want to be stupid. And I'm just like, tears are just pouring down my face. And she's like, Mom, you are not going to be stupid. And I'm like, I'm going to be stupid. And she says, Mom, and this is where I bring in the importance of humor. Humor when you are living with a chronic disease is so important. But she says, Mom, that you could lose half of your brain power and still be the smartest person in the room. She does this dramatic pause and says, well, except for me. Like that, right? And so,
What's
and
your
that
daughter?
was
What's your daughter's name?
Aja.
Say it again.
Aja.
Aj. Oh,
Yes,
that's
and
great.
she is brilliant. I will admit that. But you know, it was she did it so deadpan, and it just made me laugh. And that was the turning point for me. That was when I realized, one, here she is, a 16-year-old kid who had to take on all of this adult responsibility really fast because I still had the double vision for a while there, right? For almost 8 weeks.
Mhm.
And so she had to drive me to work in the morning and then take herself to school to do her color guard practice by 7 a.m. and then pick me up, drop me off at home, and go back to school for color guard practice. She had to do the shopping, anything that required driving, because I couldn't do that initially. When I worked the MMA shows on the weekends, she had to drive me to other towns, and she had only driven on the freeway once. So now she has to get comfortable driving on the freeway to get me to my events, you know? And seeing her handle it so well, seeing her use humor and reminding me that I did too, right? When I walked back into the classroom the week after my diagnosis, I was wearing a patch on one eye to get some balance. And the students are, oh my God, Ms. Briscoe, what happened? What happened to your eye? So I said, you know, these were kind of at-risk students that I didn't want to scare. And so I said, well, I said, you know, I am auditioning for the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And if I get the part, you all have to come and watch it. And they're like, what? No way, Pirates of the Caribbean. I said, yes. And
I
they're like,
love that.
is this like that Black Pearl? And I said, I am the Black Pearl. Like that. They all laughed. And then I told them about, you know, being in the hospital, having the disease, and they were able to receive it so much better
Mhm.
because I made them laugh first. I forgot that because day to day, living with this disease, I would forget. Like my legs just stopped working
Mhm.
and I just dropped like you know, a rock. I just dropped and it didn't last very long. But I was scared. And all of the little things that you experience, there are so many symptoms that people with MS can experience. It's terrifying if you allow it to control how you respond,
Mhm.
right? So I can't control, and that's not completely true either because putting my body in its best condition helps to mitigate some of those symptoms. So in that sense, I can control it. But there are going to be some things that the disease does that no matter how healthy I eat and no matter what good shape I'm in and no matter how great I think about things, the disease is still there, right? And it is still going to do some things. But do I let that put me in bed for a week because I'm depressed? Or do I say, oh, okay, I can't do that this way, but I can still do it. I just have to do it a different way and
Mhm.
still continue living my life,
Mhm.
right? And then I also think, you know, I have friends who need aids to walk. I have friends who are in chairs who cannot walk. They've had it a lot longer than I have. Um, and they are in high spirits. They are proactive. They are amazing people. You know, what do I really have to complain about? what do I really have to just be down on myself about? I do really well with this disease, and I'm proud of that. And being proactive means helping others too. So I got active with the society, and I go and I talk to legislators about laws that we need that help protect people, not just people with MS, but people who are requiring something that the law can provide that we can't do on our own,
Mm,
right? So regulations and different things that they need to enact so that we can do what we need to do. I do that, right? The society has flown me to Washington, D.C. to talk to legislators there. I do State Action Day in California
mm,
every year. We have public policy conference coming up where we, learn about these things. I participated on the consumer review panel for the MS research program that's out of the Department of Defense. And I got to look at all of these funding requests for research that are things that are going to improve the lives of people living with MS and some other diseases that some of the things that they're proposing can benefit.
mm.
So I can either be a victim or I can be an MS warrior, and I choose to be an MS warrior. And I choose to find opportunities to make life better for me and for the people in my life, the people in my community, and the people just at large who need a little bit of help. And I'm okay with saying, I need help. I am not perfect. I can't do everything. I'm only perfect in my imperfection, but I am unapologetically me. And if that means that I need a hand with something, I'm okay with asking for it because I have a lot of strengths, but I also have some weaknesses. And if somebody has my weakness as their strength, come over this way. Let's partner and do this thing.
I love that philosophy. That's great. And this vantage point of, controlling what you can, accepting the things that you can't control, and just setting a positive narrative and being a warrior instead of a victim. Huge. We're running out of time here. And tell everybody where they can find you, how they connect with you if they want to learn more or they want to work with you.
So you can go to my Facebook page. It is Yvette R. Brisco. You can find me on Twitter. If you Google me, you'll find me all over the place. So it's just Yvette Brisco, Yvette with a Y. And yeah, reach out. I would love to talk to you about what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, things that you can try, what we can do. I would love to connect with folks and how you can get involved. There's so many opportunities to just really dive into service to the community through MS. And I would love to connect you with those resources as well.
Beautiful. I appreciate all the work you're doing, Yvette. Thank you for teaching me a lot here. And I'll make sure to not compete against you with respect to mixed martial arts. You'll probably put me in an arm bar and break my arm off.
I do like jujitsu, but I mean, I like boxing too. And MMA is one of those sports where surprisingly it's very therapeutic, and I highly recommend that. But if that's not your thing, then if you have MS and you want some other kind of physical activity, I also recommend Polynesian dance because it's amazing and feels really good. So,
Polynesian dance.
hi, hula girl right here.
Yvette, keep fighting the good fight. Keep doing good work. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. Fun.